buy and that they do access them. And we need to improve access to affordable prevention interventions, testing and treatments. And this includes negotiating better prices, particularly in places like South Africa. But to do this, we're really going to need enhanced funding for harm reduction if we're truly going to eliminate hepatitis C and HIV. I can't end this talk without stressing the importance of eliminating stigma, discrimination, and violence, because without that, I think we'll really struggle. And I think we do need drug policy reform, thinking about moving away from criminalization towards a more health-based approach. In closing, I'd just like to acknowledge all of my collaborators and people who contributed to the global reviews. A massive thank you for inviting me for this opportunity to speak. I'm really quite excited about what South Africa is going to achieve in the next several years, and very much looking forward to seeing what you do achieve. So thank you for your time.
Incarceration, following which a panel will be convened, which will be chaired by my other friend and colleague, Prof. Pelmos Mashabela. So if we can roll that video by Ms. Busi, thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you our initiative on treatment and care of drug use disorders for people in contact with the criminal justice system, with a focus on alternatives to conviction or punishment. As you know, the best response to treatment of drug use disorders is evidence-based treatment, such as what we have laid out in the UNODC WHO International Standards for Treatment of Drug Use Disorders. It has proven not only to reduce drug use and improve the quality of life and health of people with drug use disorders, but also to reduce associated crime, while it costs less than doing nothing, than incarceration, than probation, and it also kind of produces additional positive outcomes for the entire community. Nevertheless, many people with drug use disorders are in contact with the criminal justice system, including only for offenses related to personal use of drugs. So here you can see, based on UNODC estimates, that even at the conviction level of the criminal justice continuum, more than half of people are in contact with criminal justice system for drug possession for personal use offenses. We do know that drug use does not stop in prison. On the contrary, estimates say that there is 4 times as much drug use in prison than in the general community, and there is very limited access to treatment of drug use disorders in the criminal justice system. So it's really a prerogative to keep people who are in contact with the criminal justice system for personal use offenses in the community and offer the best treatment we have. And in that context, also keep in mind the global prison overcrowding crisis, to which we could contribute by, again, keeping people that do not require incarceration, people with drug use disorders, personal use of drugs in the community, and support them there instead of sending them to the prison system. But nevertheless, we see that there are way too many people not only in prisons, but also in so-called compulsory treatment or detention centers, or in clandestine centers that do not have a license, that are often associated with human rights abuses, or people find themselves without any access to treatment of drug use disorders, as a global gap for treatment of drug use disorder prevails, and at best 1 in 5 people with drug use disorders has access to treatment. Just to say that compulsory treatment as such is ineffective due to the biopsychosocial nature of drug use disorders, and that human rights abuses and degrading practices have no place in treatment of drug use disorders. The use of compulsory drug detention and rehabilitation centers is a custodial measure, and such does not qualify as a non-custodial alternative to conviction or punishment. UNODC and partners have called frequently for the closure of compulsory drug treatment or detention centers. So the good news is that there are multiple international policy agreements that support treatment as an alternative to conviction or punishments, especially in cases of personal use and other minor offenses committed by people with drug use disorder. So for example, in the International Drug Control Conventions, the parties to the conventions, the countries, have taken a commitment to provide a continuum of care, including prevention, treatment, rehabilitation, aftercare for people in need, and they have agreed that these measures can be offered, including as a complete alternative to conviction or punishment in cases related to personal use and other offenses of a minor nature. Please also take into account the larger kind of international legal framework where the United Nations standard minimum rules for non-custodial measures, or the Tokyo rules, really call on us to consider prison really always as a measure of last resort, and the Bangkok rules that have specified this further for women in contact with the criminal justice system. Also, we need to take into account international human rights obligations. I've just, as an example here, mentioned the right to health, but there are also additional rights like the right to be free from degrading treatment or medical experimentation or other things. Both the Commission on Narcotic Drugs and the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, UNODC steering bodies, have taken this up several times and put it into more detailed resolutions, like CND Resolution 58.5 on supporting the collaboration of public health and justice authorities in pursuing alternative measures to conviction or punishment for appropriate drug-related offenses of a minor nature, and have called or invited UNODC in consultation with member states to provide guidelines and technical tools to enhance this justice health collaboration, and have also invited member states in collaboration with UNODC and relevant other entities to work on technical assistance and training to improve health and justice collaboration and the implementation of alternative measures to conviction or punishment for appropriate drug-related offenses of a minor nature. In 2017, already UNODC and WHO have launched a respective initiative, Health for Justice, Justice for Health. And we have developed a range of technical guidance documents, including on how to best do treatment of drug use disorders and how to do it as an alternative to conviction or punishment, at what stage and how to refer people out from the justice system to the criminal justice system. We have mapped the current situation with regard to alternatives to conviction or punishment. We have implemented training materials, and all of this is available for you, and we are continuing to provide further guidance. As you can see here, as I'm highlighting our future plans, we want to do a continued mapping of diversion opportunities that exist in the world through different ways. We will include the work on treatment as an alternative in the dissemination package of the International Standards for Treatment of Drug Use Disorders. We are continuing, and we need your support and interest to continue providing technical assistance at country level and demonstrate that treatment as an alternative is also feasible, and we can demonstrate the outcomes in low middle income country settings. We are also working on the development of implementation principles for treatment as an alternative based on extensive expert consultations, and to make implementation at country level more easy and more manualized. And please also note that we are finalizing an online training course on treatment as an alternative. And we are considering to develop kind of a quality assurance package for treatment as an alternative for countries that have already started this work. And obviously, we're linking with different partners and networks in the different regions, some of which you might hear today about as well. Please also note that in this overall initiative on Health for Justice and Justice for Health,
The chairperson of the Central Drug Authority, members of the Provincial Substance Abuse Forum, invited and distinguished delegates, good morning. I'm not Goodman Sebego, I'm Pelmos Mashabela. So he has just asked me to do this short segment on the alternative to incarceration. And before we do, because I'm going to call on 3 or 4 people that are just going to take us through what is it that they do about people who use drugs, alternative to sending them to prison. So I've got the members of the panels, but the choir said, Minister, because when you walk in here, they really welcomed you. They said they've got a song specifically for this summit. And I'm biased, Minister, because I'm with Minister Ronald Lamola. So I think if she's going to see you on X, on the choir, and there's nothing about the summit, you'd think that they have not only come here to support the summit, but they are here also to support the Minister of Social Development, which is a great idea for us because we work together on this. So I don't know whether the choir is here, but I'm going to call on, whilst the choir is walking in, just to render a song, I'm going to request Dr. Zota Musoma from the Department of Correctional Services. I'm going to request Advocate Mapile Molefe from the NPA, National Prosecuting Authority, and I'm going to request Major General Matonzi to come on stage just to say 1 or 2 things on alternative to incarceration measures. Whilst the choir is setting up and the panelists are coming on stage, I just want to confirm few facts. One is that addiction is a brain disease. It is a brain disease. It's psychology 101. So if you've got addiction, you've got a disease. Now, people who are sick should not go to prison. We don't send sick people to prison. You send them to a place where they must be assisted because it's a disease. But the harmful use of substances, both illicit and licit, is what we are also concerned about. That people should not use substances in a harmful way. But from time immemorial, people will use drugs. You can't stop people from drinking alcohol, smoking, nicotine, taking their coffees or their medications and stuff. We can't stop that from happening. So we can't necessarily have a drug-free society, but we can have a society where we've got a responsible way at which we relate with some of these substances. That's what we're trying to work around. Now, the National Drug Master Plan assists us in understanding that those of us who may not have a way to use the substances in a responsible way need all of us to help them so that they can all be functional as they use the substances. So the stigma around those who use harmfully and those who use responsibly doesn't belong in here. So unfortunately, Central Drug Authority is seized with the responsibility and the DSD to educate communities that we will all use drugs at some point in our lives. But at least all we are worried about is that let there be an understanding on how we relate to the substances. This morning I saw, let me allow the choir to render an item. just as we're settling down on this. Thanks, Kwai.
Safa sapela kamiswa inkabe kwensejanina wema Afrika. Safa sapela kamiswa inkabe kwensejanina wema Afrika. Safa sapela kamiswa ingabe kwenzenjanina wema Afrika wema totalithinina amakhaya aphelile ngenxa yesidakamizwa wema Afrika wema totalithinina amakhaya aphelile ngenxa yesidakamizwa wema Afrika Morena kase sibaka Seriemi kasonamo
Standing before you, narrating a very sad story about the drugs. We are saying we are enough of drugs. What have we done as parents? What have we done as mothers? What have we done as fathers to deserve what we are getting? The youth is perishing before us because of drug abuse. Our kids, they end up in prisons. They make us cry day and night because of drugs. Kids are stealing from their parents because of drugs. We are saying we are enough. We are enough of drug abuse. What have we done? Resenting, what have we done to deserve this? It's very sad. We no longer have youth. Youth is perishing because of drug abuse. We no longer have future president because of drugs. We are saying we are enough. Resenting.
Thank you very much, Unitas Koshimampuru Choir. Once more, let's give them a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Let me also acknowledge the Deputy Minister of Social Development in our midst. And once more, on behalf of the CDA, appreciate how much this means to the leadership of this country. To have the executive of the national executive and provincial executive sitting with us and really listening to all this means a lot to us. And I think it means a lot to this country in terms of how serious they are taking this summit and the issues of drugs in the country. So once more, I just want to appeal to members of this and delegates to appreciate and recognize how serious this is, in this country. But let's give them a round of applause and appreciate the fact that they are actually with us. Now, Health for Justice and Justice for Health initiative is really about accepting the responsibility that people who have got conditions need help from a health perspective. And again, as a continent that is known to be youthful, we've got a number of youth in this continent. The future has to start from here that we build it up. So I'm very pleased to have these esteemed panelists that are just going to share with us measures that they put in place to deal with to address us on how in their own environment they consider alternative to incarceration. We don't have a lot of time on this, so I'm just going to throw 1 or 2 questions to all of them so that at least we can wrap up this session as quickly as possible. But obviously from what Anya said from the UNODC, you can see there's a lot of work that they are promoting, the human rights of the people who use drugs, the whole shebang. But let me start with the most interesting one, cannabis. The National Assembly has recently adopted the bill for people to use in their private houses. So you can use cannabis if you are an adult and there are no children around, because children are still not allowed they've never been, they're still not allowed to use cannabis. And this is a progressive law because it's in alignment with the Concord judgment. We are not talking from a prohibition point of view. We are not talking from a moral point of view. We're just saying the act is there now. Now, SAPS has always been accused, General Maton, of arresting people who are in possession of drugs and using drugs. And in the advent of this bill now that is going through the normal parliamentary process, how do you think and what do you think SAPS is going to respond in the context of challenges that they have in relation to illicit drugs and cannabis being one of them? I hand over. What do you think SAPS is going to do? There's a mic on there. Each one of you can.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me acknowledge the Honorable Minister and the Deputy Minister and all protocol observed. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Major General Matonsi from SAPS, as indicated. Maybe let me start by saying that the security sector, police included, we are guided by the laws of the country. So once the law has been introduced, for us is to make sure that the law is implemented accordingly. We are mandated by Section 205, as you are aware of the Constitution, and one of the things that we must do, I say must because it's not a negotiable thing, is to enforce the law as it is. But the final decision rests with the courts. The courts, they decide. They make the final decision, obviously subject to certain conditions such as the appeal, etc. But at the end of the day, they make the final decision. But as far as the alternatives are concerned, we have the 2 main alternative methods that we adopt as the police. The first one will be the fine, which we call admission of guilt fine. In other words, if a person admits in certain conditions that a crime has been committed, a person can pay a fine, which then will allow that person not to go to incarceration. The second one is around what is called the police bail. There are different kinds of bail, but this one is a police bail, which is also mandated by the Criminal Procedure Act to allow a person to be given bail by the police under certain conditions, but also for certain offenses as well. But as it stands, the possession of illicit substances, as well as the dealing, it remains a crime at this stage. And therefore, the police are obliged in terms of the law to make sure that they act. But as far as the cannabis is concerned, as Professor Mashabela has just touched on, is that cannabis, following the court judgment, which we are all aware of, is that if a person is in possession of cannabis for private use in a private space, then the person may use that cannabis. But of course, we're still waiting for that to be, once the law has been in place, then we will comply with it accordingly from our case. So I think the important thing is that there has to be certain adjustment in terms of the law to make sure that people who use substances are regarded to some extent or to a large extent as a medical condition that require treatment. I think once that has been done, the security sector will therefore be obliged in terms of that law to comply with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe I should check with you, Advocate, that alternative to incarceration measures or non-custodial measures have been in the statutes book for decades. And South Africa is also part of one of those countries that implement some of them. But maybe let me check with from the prosecutorial point of view. What are the alternative to incarceration measures that are being used from the NPA point of view?
Okay. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, colleagues. I just want to take this opportunity to greet all of you, and also the Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and also the members of the CDA and its strategic partners. On the side, I'm Apile Molefe. I'm an advocate with NPA head office. I agree with Professor Mashabela that alternative incarceration has been used for decades, and so what I'm going to say is that in terms, okay, there are various alternative to incarceration. One of them will be, the social worker knows about it, the Section 33. If you realize that you are a danger to yourself, or we know that you are taking drugs, the social worker can compile a report, take it to the magistrate, then you'll be taken to a rehabilitation center. The other one is kids or children that are found in conflict with the law. The Child Justice Act says that this kind of thing, what would happen is that we've got what we call diversion programs that is available for adults and also for children. We also, where you'll be diverted, there are programs that are with Department of Social Development, and also there are programs that are run by the other NGOs. And after you have attended those compilatory program, a report will be compiled, the report will be brought to us. We will then decide either to close the docket. In other words, you won't be going to jail. But at the same time, we also have, a fine is one of those things that is there. As General Matonzi has already said, that we are complying. Section 4, Section 4B of Act 140 of 1992, that is Drug Act. It says that any person that is found with drugs or dealing with drugs, the person will be arrested and will have to be prosecuted. So currently we have Minimum Sentence Act, which is there. The sentence is very heavy. But however, on the side of alternative incarceration, what would happen is that if, let's say, you are arrested and convicted, obviously, if you admit your offenses, what would happen is that a social worker or a correctional service officer will compile a report. Either we are not going to send you to jail, but we can give you a correctional supervision, or you can go to a rehabilitation center. And if you are a child, you can be sentenced for a particular period of time to child youth care centers. And we also have various forms. We know that we've got various forms such as, I've talked about diversion. We also have what would one, mediation, where a case can be mediated, and then after mediation, the case will then be withdrawn either with condition or without conditions. And also, we also take into account that each and every case, colleagues, it depends also with the kind of, let's say, drugs that you have. If you've got a lot of drugs, obviously, we know that the presumption is that this person is not just a possessor, he's a dealer. The sentence is going to be very much high, up until 25 years imprisonment. And so those are the alternatives that I can mention to you, And we also have life skills programs that are available in case you are in conflict with the law, you don't want to be, let's say, having criminal record and everything. So those are some of the things that are available on our site. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate. Dr. Msuma, we are always confronted by activists and interested citizens about some of the releases that are made within the environment of correctional services. Now, one of the challenges that they're raising, and probably they're going to raise it here, is that people who use drugs are part of those that have filled up prisons. So the reason why prisons are brimming is because of people who use drugs. And people who use drugs are not necessarily criminals. Now, in view of all these different discussions that go around overcrowding and releases, what are those alternative to incarceration measures and releases that you apply in relation to alternative to incarceration as it affects people who use drugs?
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Let me take this opportunity to also acknowledge the presence of the Minister, Deputy Minister, and the distinguished guests. As indicated, my name is Dr. Zodwa Msuma. I'm the Acting Deputy Commissioner, Executive Management in the Office of the National Commissioner. This is a very interesting question that you're asking, Prof, mainly because the Department of Correctional Services is right at the tail end of the criminal justice system. And we also have a mandate to ensure that we enforce the sentences as made by the different courts. Just to put things into perspective, I would like just to highlight and give a background with regard to the overcrowding levels in our facilities. We can only accommodate 104,550 inmates in our facilities. But currently, as at the beginning of November, we have more than 149,000, which means we have an excess of more than 45,000. And this translates to 43% of the overcrowding level. Now, talking about the inmates who are serving sentences that are related to drugs, we have about 1,462 and more. Of course, this is the statistics that we have drawn from our database as at the end of September 2023. One of the measures, particularly that we refer those as alternative to incarceration, we are actually advocating that those offenders who are struggling with a drug addiction and also with mental illnesses, they need to be identified and diverted away from the correctional facilities. Mainly because correctional facilities were never meant to accommodate this type of offenders. And even more so, our correctional officials have got limited skills to deal with this group. So we are of the view that the treatment centers in the correctional facilities and the mental health community-based facilities, they are better placed to deal with these type of offenders. However, we do have substance abuse programs which fall under rehabilitation programs that we offer in our facility, but of course at a limited scale, as this depends on the available resources. We have psychologists, social workers, and healthcare workers who are offering these. But what is important to mention is that we are continuing to explore ways of making sure that we characterize and understand the magnitude and the extent of substance use in our facilities. And in doing that, we have actually worked very well with UCT, the ITTC, in order to then benefit from the Assist app, which help us to identify and profile the risk so that we can then refer these offenders that need help. But I must also say, Chairperson, as I indicated, that correctional services is right at the tail end. There are a number of measures that we put in place, and one of them is the parole system. The parole system, as much as it cannot really be defined as alternative to incarceration, but it gives an opportunity to offenders to finish serving the rest of their sentences in communities. And this also helps in ensuring that we implement effective social reintegration programs so that these are not isolated. I must also indicate as well, Chairperson, that it's really difficult to see the effectiveness of the implementation of some of the alternative to incarceration measures that are put in place by the criminal justice system, mainly because under our community corrections, we really have very few numbers. We only have more than just 5,000 offenders who are sentenced to community work or to community services. So for me, really comparing to the national inmate population of more than 149,000 that we have in our facilities, we can really say that is a drop in the ocean. So we continue to work very closely with the criminal justice partners to ensure that we review our legislative frameworks to ensure that we have a coherent strategies to implement alternatives to incarceration. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to members of the panel. I need to come back for a last round, which will take 1 minute each to wrap up. Minister, they're talking about the fine, they're talking about bails, they're talking about all these nice things, but the communities say, but people go to prison for using drugs. I'm not sure whether we are on the same page here. One of the big challenges is that we do have in the facility people who are in prison because they can't afford bail. You're sentenced, you got a bail of 1,000 rands or less, thereabout, but you are arrested. Now, I'm told reliably by the department that for you to spend a day in prison, they pay about 430 rands, thereabout. It might be more, it might be less, given the dollar rand exchange, maybe. Now, you are in prison, awaiting trial, because you cannot afford the 1,000 rand bail. But now you're going to take 3 months in prison waiting to be, the decision, your fate needs to be decided. In 3 months, you probably have exceeded the amount of money that you were not able to afford. And I know that there was an idea mooted that why don't the country create a bail fund? Because a bail is money that comes to you anyway. So basically it's not, you're not losing anything when you have been sentenced or when you have been discharged. So there are people who are sitting in facilities longer because they just cannot afford bail money. But we as taxpayers, and taxpayers are very proud people, Minister, they always remind us that they're taxpayers. We as taxpayers pay for the very same person who stole from you. So he steals your, he smokes dacha, because there's people who believe that when you smoke dacha, you're a criminal. But anyway, he smokes dacha, breaks into a house, steals your flat screen TV. Now he goes to prison. You as a victim, you don't get any benefit. You don't get your TV back, by the way. But the person is in prison and you have to pay for his upkeep. So that 433 comes from you. So you actually lost the TV, but also you are paying for the person's livelihood in prison. I'm finding that difficult. Can I get from the police and maybe from the prosecution? Because Zota says, Dr. Musoma is saying she's at the tail end. Why? What is the thinking behind that? We've got people who are in prison because they just cannot afford bail. And remember, bail is not an admission of wrongfulness. It's just to say, if you get money, tomorrow you are out. So basically, we've got such people. Can I just get in 1 minute, advocate, what is the thinking behind that?
Okay. Colleagues, look, bail is money that it will be deposited, or that, okay, when you commit an offense, you normally appear in court. Court will grant you bail or not grant you bail. If the court grants you bail, what would happen is simple, is that they're saying that give us this money so that you can come back and attend your case. There are people who pay more than 100,000, 200, 500, even in Limpopo, I dealt with cases of cigarettes. A person will pay R1 million. He will never come back to court. So now, but be that as it may, okay, the position is very simple. If you are unable to pay bail while you are in custody, in terms of Correctional Service Act, there is what we call Section 62F. Section 62F is a process where a correctional service officers will come with a list of people, approach the prosecution to say, guys, you have given these people bail, they cannot afford it, what should happen? Then what we'll do is that obviously the people will then appear in court, and we will then release them on a free bail or at their own recognition. Simple as that. Okay. The other thing is, you can, if you've got a bail of 1,000 rands, when you appear again, you can request the bail to be reduced. It can be reduced up until 200 rands. So you still have that opportunity to say, guys, I can't afford this, these are my circumstances, I can afford 300 rands. But it also depends on the severity. I mean, if you were found with 100 bags or 10 bags of drugs, really, we are not going to be taking that into account. Okay. Thank you.
General?
No, thanks, Program Director. I think, firstly, I think we must congratulate the police that there is a surplus of 43% population in the prison. It means that they are doing their work. And I can safely say that since we started the festive operations, probably going to bring another 40,000 by the end of January, because the police are working throughout as we speak. But coming on the issue of the bail, I think the advocate has covered very, very well. But from our side, the investigating officer in the case of bail, because bail is allowed by law, it's not something that you can stop. But what the police, the role of the investigating officer in a bail will be go to court to oppose bail if there are circumstances that allows that. Because what the court will be looking for is whether, is there any chance of this person to run away? Is it easy for this person to find him in case he runs away? And so on and so on. What is the possibility of this suspect or this accused to threaten the witnesses, etc.? So the role that we only play will be to decide or to present to the magistrate whether there is any chance that this person may violate any of the conditions of the bail. But I think overall, it all talks to the changes and adjustment around the legislative framework for that bail condition, or for those, for what we have raised to be addressed going forward. Thank you very much.
Okay. Doc, we've got 1 second.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just to also indicate that, yes, we do have those remand detainees who are incarcerated in our facilities who cannot really afford bail. But maybe it's also important to understand some of the dynamics around this. I just want to make a reference to just one case that we once had of a remand detainee who was supposed to pay 300 rands. But when the family came to the fore to assist, he said, no, I cannot take the money that is supposed to pay for the bread of my kids and come pay it here. So it just goes to show that at times the socioeconomic circumstances of the inmate population is not always able to meet the demands of the requirements as indicated by the court. Perhaps we need also to look at other strategies of accommodating this. We do make the application, of course, to request the court to release this, but I must say that we don't always yield positive results. Thank you.
So thank you, but Minister, you see, this is where we have a problem. Because you are the custodian of the most vulnerable and the poor people that get 350. Now, if you get a bail of 500 that you can't afford, I can't take the 350 and pay bail with, because that's for to survive. It's actually between yourself and death. So I hope we're going to have an engagement and resolution with the Criminal Justice System Department to understand that there are those people who are in prison for poverty-related. Those ones can be looked into differently. Yes, the law is the law, but that has to be considered. And this is in the context of affordability, availability, and accessibility. Because we can't imprison people simply because they can't afford. And I'm saying bail is money that comes. We can't talk 100 million bail. We're talking 500 rands. We're talking women who are unable to pay 1,000 rand. It's a bail, meaning you have not yet been found guilty. So at the point when you are found guilty, yes, there will be a determination. So I think we need an engagement beyond this. But thank you for this opportunity. The last point, and I just want not all members of the panel, maybe Advocate Molefe, please convince us here. We are sitting with people who, as a result of this judgment, whether it's judgment on cannabis or what have you, like children. Now we are flooded with those who are in need of expungements of their criminal records. Because remember, criminal record also disadvantages some of these people in terms of getting jobs. Now the court says this is now the law. The agility of the system is not necessarily complementing that judgment. As a result, people are sitting and they said, look, I can't find this job because I still have a criminal record not expunged. Here is the court judgment, but here is my record. How do we reconcile the expungement of the criminal record that emanate from some of these progressive court judgments that we are seeing, especially when it comes to people who use drugs, to assist them and enable them to get employment, and some of them to move on with their lives? How do we do that?
Okay, look, in as much as there are court judgments that are there, previously what was happening was that with regard to the expungement of criminal records, people were applying to have their criminal record. They were applying to the Minister of Justice to have their criminal record expunged from the records. And the time limit that was put was that it should be a minor offense, and you should have stayed without committing another offense or being convicted for 10 years before your record can be expunged.
Yes, they've done all that.
So now, if colleagues, if it happens that if there is a court judgment, what I'm going to request colleagues to do is very simple, that the people that are having custody of the criminal record is South African Police Service. Because what should happen is that I'm not sure whether that should be whether in terms of the operations, whether the expungement of criminal record is going to happen automatically in light of the court judgment. But what would happen is that, we are expecting applicants to come forward, to come and approach the subs to say, I've got criminal records, there are forms to be filled, and then from there, the process will go on where the records will be expunged. But what I'm going to say is that SAPS is the custodians of the criminal records. And Department of Justice obviously is also involved, because when you get sentenced, you are not sentenced by NPA, but you are sentenced by Department of Justice, of which they are the strategic partners in this thing, and they should also be involved to say that having this kind of judgment, how then do we comply with it? So it's either we should have a way where we have to look, because obviously we are not going to expunge. What we need to know is that we are not going to expunge criminal records of each and every person. That one you'll never see, I can assure you. But for minor offenses where you are found with a small quantity of drugs or cannabis or whatever, then that is going to be done. But if you are found with large quantity, obviously we are not going to expunge those records, because we are working on the reason why we have those records is that when we find you again, we should know that this kind of person is not a first time, is not a second time, and is a third time committing the very same offense. So it also has an implication in terms of sentence, because if you happen to be, for instance, if you are found with heroin, the sentence is up to 15 years. But if you're a first offender, it's 15. If you're a second offender, it's +5, it's 20. If you're a third offender, it's plus another, so it's 25. So can you see that it also assists us as SAPS and also NPA in order to make sure that we give you a proper sentence. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, we're going to have a conversation. And CDA, I think the chairperson of the CDA is going to put this on the agenda, because South Africans want their criminal record for minor offenses expunged. Some have gone 10 years and 20 years. They just want their records expunged. And if you say we're not going to get it, Minister must go and talk to cabinet there. If you say that's not going to happen, Minister, just help us there, please. This summit is an implementation of things that must assist poor people in this country. So if poor people in this country are complaining that I've got a record, I was a user of drugs, and the advocate should not worry about quantities. He must worry about the process of expungements of records when people are qualifying. But thank you very much. I think that ain't going to happen. But let me also thank the members of this panel. I think they really, under the circumstances, did well. Most of them were representing their principals, so that's why we're pushing them, so that the principal must know that they've been well represented here and it's on record. So I want to thank the members of the panel and also the opportunity to facilitate. I'm being told now that we are ready to move into the other segment. So thank you very much.
Thank you to our esteemed colleagues for that important discussion. And thank you to Prof. Mashabela for his knowledgeable managing of that panel. So to move us forward, we know that the minister is rushed, and so Minister, I will be ready for you shortly to proceed with the signing. In the interim, we'd just like to invite Mr. Peter Posthumus, who is the executive, let me just make sure I'm doing this right so you can really all hear me. Mr. Peter Posthumus, the Executive Syndicated Tax and Customs Crime Division in South Africa, to talk about South African Revenue Service, to talk about the burden of addictive disorders in South Africa, and to talk about the SA Fiscus and funding of the substance abuse sector. If you can come through, please, Mr. Posthumus. And I apologize for asking you to please be as fast as possible while imparting these important words to us.
Good morning, colleagues. I was tied up this morning with some pressing court actions, so I didn't observe who's all the honorable guests, but let me start with all protocol observed, and welcome to all. I'm joined by Mohamed Tseri. He's an executive in the Customs and Excise Division, and he's going to co-facilitate or present the segment. As highlighted by Palmos, you know, if a user breaks into your house, steals your TV, there's a cost associated with the incarceration of such a user, criminal, and I say criminal because he's now broke into your house, but there's also the associated cost of the trauma and the loss of the TV for the people that stays into the house. Secondly, such cost associated with substance abuse is very difficult to accurately determine. And thirdly, there has been a lack of updated research associated with the substance abuse. And I believe and I suggest that this is a priority for the CDA to make this research possible so we can talk from a point of informed data. It's common knowledge that substance abuse is has severe damaging effects on society and requires a substantial amount from government to reduce it. There's direct costs, such as healthcare, social care, security, our courts, our prisons, that can be calculated, but there's also the indirect costs, the impact of national productivity, employment, and our loss of human capital due to the associated crime rates. According to the Governance, Public Safety and Justice Survey in 2021 by Stats SA, liquor outlets are the third most likely place to get murdered. So if they say enter at own risk, you know why. 14.5% of all rape cases in the first quarter of 2022, 1,383 involved liquor or substance abuse. Yeah? And amongst the 72,762 cases of assault that was reported, 3,695 was also related to substance abuse. That's about 5%. So you can see why it makes it difficult to calculate the actual cost associated with substance abuse. Just to put some rands and cents to this, statistics from the World Health Organization indicate that the substance abuse in South Africa is twice the world norm. We've raised it in the summit that this should be treated as a pandemic. If our substance abuse in South Africa is twice that of the world norm, we are surely dealing with a pandemic and it should receive the same attention. %15% of South Africa's population have a substance abuse problem. And substance abuse is costing South Africa 20 billion in direct costs, and it's a bigger threat to our future than the AIDS pandemic. So why isn't it receiving that attention? We must ask ourselves that question. It's we that's within this room that needs to make it possible. So we need to ask ourselves, why aren't we driving this? Why aren't we putting the pressures where it's required to make that possible? So just from the medical journal, the associated costs just with alcohol abuse alone, that's absenteeism, Babala's Mondays, yeah? Loss of productivity, health, welfare cost, and alcohol-related crime. This was in 2014, that was the latest research. 37.9 billion rand. If this doesn't spark our leaders to say, hey, this is a pandemic, this is something that eats our money, nothing will. If you calculate with the inflation and bring it to today's cost, just on alcohol abuse alone, 48 billion. We can build a hell of a lot of treatment centers, have a lot of educational programs, build a lot of schools with 48 billion. And that is investing in the future of our kids and that of South Africa. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Mojave, my learned colleague, just to take us through some of the learnings that we, from a SARS perspective, have seen within our borders. Mojave?
Thanks, Peter. Good day, colleagues. My name is Moabi. I work within SARS Customs and Excise environment. We'll try to go through this quickly in the interest of time. Am I audible, ma'am? Yeah. Much better. Okay, thank you. In the interest of time, we'll try to go through this very quickly. As you all know, the SARS mandate is to collect all revenue that is due to the state to ensure optimal compliance with tax and customs legislation. We also provide a customs and excise service that seeks to optimize revenue collection, participate in border protection, and to facilitate legitimate trade. The 12,500 employees at SARS are very passionate and committed to our higher purpose, which very simply put is to enable government to build a capable state that, number one, sustains economic growth, and one that is able to enable social development that serves the well-being of all South Africans. In our line of work, we deal with a lot of global and international stakeholders. The list that you see there is not exhaustive. The World Customs Organization, the European Union, the BRICS nations, the Southern African Customs Union, etc. Domestically and within government, we interact with the CDA, hence we're here, the South African Police Service, the Border Management Authority, and various other government departments. We also deal with industry associations, such as Business Unity SA, the South African Association of Freight Forwarders, the Road Freight Association, etc. Let's talk a bit about the drug fight. So the National Drug Master Plan of 2019 to 2024 was approved by government and is a blueprint aimed at uprooting the drug problem through a multidisciplinary, multi-sectorial approach as guided by various UN conventions and other international bodies. We at SARS collaboratively work with other law enforcement agencies domestically, regionally, internationally, to disrupt and dismantle drug trafficking networks. We all talk about drug use as South Africans with understanding that we are consumers of drugs. But we've also become, over the years, a transit or a redistribution route of drugs produced locally, or drugs that have been previously imported from other countries. We collaborate with the World Customs Organization, which has 185 member states. So all our narcotic seizures are submitted through to the WCO, and we're able to then, based on the comprehensive information that's captured there, we're able to target much better and analyze trends of how drugs move between different countries. We've recently, through the Nairobi Convention, had huge successes with Australia and New Zealand. In fact, just this morning on News 24, they're reporting that 5 officials, which include AXA officers or staff members, have been arrested this morning for facilitating drugs that found their way from South Africa to Australia. We work very well with SAPS, the Hawks, and the FIC in dismantling these drug cartels. And in recent weeks, we've had big successes in Gqeberha and in Durban. So this confirms that continuous international and domestic collaboration on the war of drugs remains a critical enabler in combating this pandemic, as Peter correctly calls it. It's a pandemic. Just for context as well, over the past few days, there's been a lot of talk about South Africa having porous borders. We at SARS are of the view that we don't have a porous border problem. We've got a corruption problem. All the dots that you see on that map are customs. I'm sorry, all the dots you see on the map are ports of entry in this country. We've got sufficient ports of entry. Neighboring Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Swaziland, Lesotho, and the sea borderline, which is about 2,798 kilometers in distance, and the land borderline is just over 4,800 kilometers. If people talk of porous borders, is the suggestion that we build a wall starting in Cape Town all the way to Richards Bay along the sea, so that nothing comes through from the sea into the country, and vice versa. Do we build a wall or a fence similar to the one that was erected in Limpopo, along the Limpopo River, to try and keep people out? Colleagues, our problem is not the borders. We are well resourced at our borders. At each and every one of those dots, there are either police, SSA, customs, immigration, border authority. There are government officials at these ports. Customs contributes 2,140 odd employees. Now, as I get to the end of our story, in addition to the 2,140 employees, we also have 92 dogs in our employ. They have employee numbers just like me, and they're very, very important in our fight against illicit trade. Our dogs are able to sniff out minerals such as gold, CITES such as rhino horn, lion bones, obviously narcotics, and currency. We also have X-ray scanning machines at various ports, cargo scanners and baggage scanners. So we're able to scan trucks as they come through some of the ports. Some successes in the previous financial year relating to narcotics, we had 525 seizures, primarily through the airports. In fact, 74% of all the drugs that come in and out of the country have been found at the airports, and specifically OR Tambo. Just some highlights. The second one there, on the 11th of May this year, the DDU, that stands for the Detected Dog Unit, they were able to discover a parcel that had crystal substance wrapped in grey duct tape, and it was found to be crystal meth weighing 25 kilograms at a value of 7.5 million. Even more impressively, on the 5th of June this year, again the dog unit in conjunction with our scanner unit, OR Tambo, found a shipment that had come from China destined to South Africa of a precursor that is used in the manufacture of man drugs. The street value of that precursor is 178 million. So you can imagine how many drugs could have been made had that interception not happened. Some 3-4 weeks ago in Durban, a shipping container declared as paint came in And through the scanner and the work done by customs together with the police, when upon further inspection, 500 bricks of cocaine were found in 40 of these paint buckets. So you can do the simple maths. It's 350,000 per brick times 500. That's a lot of million. Just examples as well from OR Tambo, you had these crates which were to be exported to New Zealand, and they were declared as machines. So you'll see on the bottom left, if you open the crate, you do find some kind of machine, but at the bottom of that crate, the second half or the bottom half of the crate, there's a concealed, or what we call a concealed compartment that had compressed dagga. And a few weeks ago, also through OR Tambo, we had a shipment of these compressors that came through, and our customs officers, as you can see there with the grinder working very hard, upon opening this thing, they were able to find a compressed dagga in there as well. Again, another example through OR Tambo, your cocoa butter, shampoo, and cream. You would look at these things and assume that it's cosmetic products, but upon further inspection, there's a crystal meth that was actually in these tubs. This one also gave us a tough match. We had to go and procure a grinder at the time because we didn't have one, as part of our tools of trade, where this cylindrical part of a machine had to be drilled down, and inside we found crystal meth as well. So I guess the issue here is, what we need to realize is, we talk of porous borders, but in actual fact, the criminals are finding very creative ways of concealing and disguising their consignments. Yeah, Peter has already spoken to some of the stats from Stats SA and how the use of drugs impacts on absenteeism, lost productivity, and so on. In closing, all of us here, the buck should stop with us in resolving this drug problem. Thank you.
So the minister is requesting that if we can just return the last slide up, she'd like to take a shot of it to the guys at the back. Oh, you've got, I'm sure they'll put it up for you. Thank you. If we can just put that last slide back up, thank you. So thank you to our colleagues for, first of all, reminding us of the, not this one, the last one after this. This is the one? Is this the right one, Minister? And the next one after this? Is that the one? Next one after that? Okay, this one. Okay, thank you very much. So thanks for reflecting on the fiscal impact of substances on our population, and of course reminding us that while we're busy searching for the snake outside the house, we must remember that there might be one inside as well. So we must really keep an eye on all of our access points. With that being said, I'd like to invite Ms. Nomathemba Kela, who is going to take us through the conference declaration. So just to explain why we're doing the declaration now, is that just to accommodate the minister who has to leave us just around noon. So we'll start with the declaration so that the minister can be able to sign it. When we come back from tea, we'll do a detailed account of the resolutions that have come out of the conference. So please do accommodate us in that regard. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Kela to the stage.
Thank you, Program Director. Good morning, It's still morning. Good morning, conference. May I recognize the Minister of Social Development, the Deputy Minister of Social Development, the MECs present here, Makhosi from the House of Traditional Leaders, CDA members, and the chairperson in particular, colleagues, and may I say all protocol observed. We're here to present the declaration of the 3rd National Summit of Substance Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Just to reiterate what Prof has said, we are trying to accommodate the minister who's got other commitments to attend to, urgent commitments to attend to. So we'll be presenting the declaration, but please take note that declaration is the summary of the resolutions that have been drafted and will be presented to you after tea. As soon as the minister and the chairperson of the CDA have signed the resolutions, we'll then, I think, go for tea and then come back and then deal with the resolutions themselves. And I really hope that you find that process acceptable. May I continue to read the declaration? And this is a declaration of the 3rd National Summit on Substance Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. And the declaration goes, we as the Central Drug Authority established in terms of Section 53 of the Prevention of and Treatment for Substance Abuse Act number 70 of 2008, acknowledging the powers and duties vested in us by Parliament, other delegates gathered present in this summit, and working closely with the Minister of the Department of Social Development and all other government departments in South Africa for the fulfillment of these duties. We recognize that the scourge of drugs and alcohol is destroying the lives of our people, including children of school-going age and our youth. Concerned that substance abuse is further exacerbating crime, leading to gender-based violence, breaking up of families, increased mental health and other social ills. Recognizing that the persons responsible for the proliferation of legal and illegal substances, distribution and trade are not being appropriately and successfully prosecuted. Mindful of the mushrooming of gangs who kill the innocent in their greed for enrichment and control of the drug theft and illegal alcohol market. Concerned about the permeation of smoking, vaping, and the abuse of alcohol and other drugs in our schools, bearing in mind the irreparable cognitive, psychosocial, and economic damage to users of these substances and their families. We as a summit therefore declare our commitment to increase the rate of quality of investigations, arrests, and prosecutions of all perpetrators such as drug lords, clandestine manufacturers of illegal drug, alcohol, and other substances, distributors, and all persons associated with aiding and abetting drug and alcohol activities. We commit to support the functioning of the Inter-Ministerial Committee on Substance Abuse for the sole purpose of working together to make South Africa alcohol and drug safe. Apologies for that, it's alcohol and drug safe. The President of the Republic of South Africa must reposition the CDA and its structures at national, provincial, and local level and provide it with adequate resources to execute its mandate. that management of all ports of entry must be strengthened to prevent the illegal exportation and importation of illegal drugs, that we fast-track the immediate tabling of the Liquor Amendment Bill of 2016 to Parliament, that we develop and adopt a conflict of interest policy that guides the relationship between government at national, provincial, and local levels with the alcohol industry. We support and commit to the implementation of evidence-based services for individuals, families, communities, programs, and structural interventions. And I am cognizant of the fact that there are editorial issues that we have to contend with in the document, and we'd like for your indulgence in this regard. And we will be ensuring that this document is cleansed and purified after today. But it's important that we have the minister and our chairperson of the CDA commit to this declaration or to the essence of it, and we'd like them to come forward for the signing of the declaration. And as they come forward, we are making a request that you're not going to have, we are not going to have photographers because they are designated for photographers that will be taking pictures. So there will be that opportunity to take those pictures. So may we ask the minister and the deputy minister, and the minister and the chairperson of the CDK to please come forward. Yeah. And as they come forward, may we request the summit to adopt this declaration. By show of hands, please. Those who are for the adoption of the declaration, please show your hands. And any objections? Any abstentions? None whatsoever, so the declaration is so adopted. Yeah. As we indicated, the signing of the declaration is symbolic, and the essence of what we are committing to is indicated in the declaration. And we will be cleansing it and editing it accordingly. Thank you so much. Yes. The declaration is signed. Can we give ourselves a round of applause? And just to thank our chairperson and to thank the minister as well for acceding to this request to sign the declaration of this conference. And as indicated, we'll be taking the process forward with the resolutions. After the tea break, we'll be presenting the resolutions. Before I step down, may I just request Prof. JJ Tabane to come forward and to stand. He has graciously agreed to be co-facilitator of the resolution session of the conference and of the summit. And doing this pro bono, he's saying to us, I'm committed to the cause and I'm going to support you in doing this. So can you give him a round of applause and thank him, please. On that note, I'll hand over to the program director and step off, and he'll take us forward. I think it's tea time now, but I'm not going to preempt. I'm just going to ask the program director to come forward. Thank you.
One last jump for the day. So Prof. Tabane is looking at me with all sorts of confusion. So Prof, I think they'll make the maximum use of your time straight after tea. So we apologize for bringing you up prematurely. Thank you, Prof. So what's going to happen next? There's going to be a photograph session by the principals and some of the CDA members, and apparently there's a change of plan. Yeah. Change of plan. The minister is not feeling photogenic, but you're always photogenic, Minister. It's up to you, Minister. We have created provision. What's your preference? She will. So the CDA will explain, and then we'll take care of it. It should be very quick, Minister. So you can just hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. What is requested is when we can have our leaders, the Minister, the Deputy Minister, our Chairperson of the CDA, our MECs, and all the, from the leaders, Marina, who are there would be the front line of the photo shoot, and then we would have also the CDA members also coming through, and if at all I missed anybody, I'm running. I hope that I have covered all the significant people, but we are going to have it in this manner. It's going to be just right here in front. We're going to have the minister, she's always in the center, and then we will have our deputy minister on the minister's right, our chairperson on the left, and then our MECs and leaders, and then we'll have the taller people standing right behind them, the shorter ones on the platform, and in the shortest space of time, the photo should be taken. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So while the dignitaries arrange themselves for the photo shoot, thank you. So the rest of us are welcome to go outside to grab some tea. Those who have checked in, please,